You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 118 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my partner in crime, writer, journalist, TV personality, Jessica Szilagyi.
What's going on?
How was your week?
It was fine. I mean, it was fine. There was nothing too exciting. I heard you have an update on your white privilege.
Yes. Delta, I guess, is merging flights. So we're going to have to cancel our trip to Paris.
Oh, no.
We were going Friday, and the flight was supposed to leave about 11 o'clock, 10:45. And you arrive at noon the next day, which is about perfect because you don't get a whole lot of sleep on an airplane. And by the time you clear customs and get to your hotel, it's about time to check in, take a nap, and all that stuff. Well, and we have to work that Friday. Well, they moved it to 4 o'clock, getting in at 6 o'clock in the morning, which sucks when you fly red eye. You get there at 6 because you can't check in anywhere, and you're dead on your feet. But we would have to leave the house at noon, which means Connie just cannot take that day off.
Right.
It's just not available to do that for the coverage in her bank. So there goes Paris.
Down the drain.
Yeah. Another exciting news, I got a haircut.
You did? Did you wear your mask?
I did, and all the clippings, because they gave me a mask. They told me I had to wear a mask. So I said fine. I need a haircut bad enough. And clippings are getting in the mask. The girl cutting my hair is doing nothing but moaning and complaining about having to go back to work, and she's going to write the governor a letter. I'm like, he didn't order you back to work. So I don't think my scalp massage was all that good after that. I heard you got your hair did.
I did. It was a beautiful day. I waited way too long for it, so I also had to wear a mask, and I mean, whatever. It was fine. It's just awkward. Like, the salon just was half full. Everyone's staggered. The chairs, which are usually have, a stylist at all of them, and someone in every chair, and people waiting. I mean, this instead, you waited in your car, and they would call you and let you know when it was time to come in because the other person in the chair before you had left, and they'd cleaned it, and it's just a whole lot of extra stuff for a risk I'm willing to assume on my own. So
it's also unsustainable as a business plan. Mm-hmm. To cut 75% of your business, or 66, whatever it is. I'm told that, especially in women's salons, that you have multiple one stylist working on multiple people because one person's getting color, one person's getting a blow dryer, one person's getting cut, and one person's getting washed or whatever. So when you cut that down, you only and then you cut down your stylist by 50% because you can't have them stations next to each other. I mean, I don't think it's sustainable.
Well, I was just going to say, it really sucks for people in that industry too, because they were the first ones to be shut, and of course bars and clubs and stuff are still closed, but they had to wait to be ordered to reopen, or to be allowed to reopen, and so they're already suffering financially. Their businesses have already taken a hit, and now you're putting all these excessive burdens on them so that they can operate at half throttle. It's sad.
Restaurants too. You can occupy 50%. The restaurant business is not a high profit business anyway. And then you say you have the same rent, you have the same similar overhead, but your volume is cut in half, and you still have the peaks and valleys of dinner time rush and lunchtime rush, and then you cut that in half. It's really hard to survive, especially if you're a franchisee and you have franchise fees that are due, and things like that. It's going to be really, really tough on these businesses.
It is, and it just also feels weird. I mean, when my mom came to visit for Mother's Day weekend, and we went out to a restaurant, and it just feels weird having empty tables to meet social distancing guidelines, but it just doesn't feel like a restaurant. You're not used to the silence or the reduced level of noise, and I don't know that I think it impacts how people behave just by human nature.
It does. I mean, I'm still doing what I do, but you notice that people don't hold the door open for you because they don't want to get within 6 feet of you.
Right.
And that's just part of training that I can't overcome. I'm going to hold the door open for you. And people are like, no, go. I'm like, well, I've touched the door handle. It's already dirty, so you might as well go.
Right. You might as well let me hold it and just walk through the door.
That's just part of being raised Southern. Mm-hmm. So, we have a quick note here that Van Jones.
No.
I keep putting two people down. Vernon Jones is getting sued. Van Jones works for CNN.
And then there's Van Johnson and Savannah, and I think we've talked about all three of them on the show. Vernon Jones and Van Johnson, obviously a lot more, but this week we're talking about Vernon Jones.
Yep, he is. He's getting sued for what, Jessica?
He's getting sued for blocking people on social media and deleting critical comments on his official page and on his page where he conducts legislative business on his personal page as well. So he's getting sued in federal court by I forget the gentleman's name. I think Thomas Miko is the pronunciation, also in Cobb County. But he's being represented. There's a couple other people in the case, but the primary plaintiff is this Miko gentleman. And he's being represented by Jerry Weber, who is the same attorney who successfully represented Jimmy Herndon, who sued the Cobb County Sheriff Neil Warren for doing the same thing, deleting comments, blocking on social media, and won and got a settlement. And people get upset and say that, this is about money, and it's really not. I mean, the loser, which is, I've not seen it be anybody but the elected official, is ordered to pay the attorney's fees and a small damage amount, which is usually $750 to $1,000. The unfortunate part is that because you can't sue them personally, you sue them in their official capacity, it's coming from tax dollars. But again, send a message, teach these people over and over and over that this isn't right. And for Vernon Jones, I mean, it couldn't happen to a better guy.
Yeah, I mean, well, there are a few I could think also, but yeah, he plays. He's probably eating it up. He's loving this press coverage.
Oh yeah, he loves the Vernon show, no matter what episode it is. Yeah, I mean,
so that part of it, I don't like. And like I said, I wish it came out of their pockets.
Yeah.
Who's going to defend Vernon? Would it be Chris Carr or his office?
I don't know the answer to that, because this is the first time we've seen it with a legislator, at least in Georgia. These have happened all over the country. But
and this is the guy that said he does not work for the people, he works for the government. So
right. And so it'll be interesting to see, because in Cobb County with the sheriff, it was the county attorney that represented Sheriff Warren. And then there was recently one in Douglas County where it didn't go to court, or it didn't get all that way. There was a letter sent, and then there was an ultimate settlement, which resulted in the same thing that would have happened in court, but it was against a county commissioner. And in that case, the county attorney represented them as well. So I don't know, because even when you look at the structure of the Attorney General's office, they represent state agencies, and they can offer opinions to our lawmakers, which they do, but they're usually unofficial opinions. Sometimes they're not, but they don't represent... The legislature is not an agency. So, and it's not the legislature as a whole, and it's not the clerk in the legislative office. It's just one individual politician who's being sued for being stupid.
Right.
So, it'll be interesting. I'm excited.
Yay!
Woo!
Something non-corona related. Yay!
Yeah.
So we have a brief update on the Ahmaud Arbery case. We learned Thursday that the GBI arrested William Roddy Bryan today. The guy who filmed the now leaked video footage in the case charged, and they charged him with felony murder, criminal attempt to commit a false imprisonment charges.
Yeah. So I think we all knew he was going to be charged with something. He retained an attorney, and I think I mentioned it in one of the segments when we were talking about this in episode 117. But he retained Kevin Go, who is a former public defender in Glenn County and who has a terrible relationship with Jackie Johnson because, allegedly, of Jackie Johnson. But so he kind of picked like a charged attorney, I guess, someone who has a presence down there, which led me to believe that they kind of knew this kind of stuff was going down the pipeline. And then we also heard that there were search warrants executed at the McMichael home right before this happened, or the few days leading up to it. And then of course, he was arrested, and then on Friday they released the warrants. I was saying all that, I was surprised by the felony murder, because we saw in the video, I mean, yeah, you can hear him cock a gun, you see him driving up, but in felony murder just means that, you know, someone was killed and you were committing a felony in the act, which the underlying charge for the felony murder here is criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. But I just don't see a jury, a grand jury or a regular jury, I guess. Terrible word choice, but I don't see this sticking through the whole thing.
Do you think this is a tool to get them to flip?
You know, there's a lot of people who said that. And I guess it's possible. I'd like to think that after everything that's happened, we haven't sunk into the level of manipulating the system to get people to do what they want. I also don't know. I mean, there's so much we don't know, but there's rumors that, and they said in the press conference that they've collected information off social media, from social media accounts and neighborhood social media groups and all these things, and that there's more to this video, and that they have a lot of evidence. I mean, they say there's so much that the public hasn't seen. And if that's the case, then I don't feel like they would need him to flip. But
well, then the next question I have is, do you think that it's politically charged?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. But the thing that I've said all along is that even with the felony murder charge and aggravated assault for the McMichaels, you've charged them with those things, and we see all the time where a grand jury will come back with lesser charges or felony murder charges and some other additional lesser charges. Like, this isn't set in stone. But if the grand jury comes back with voluntary manslaughter or something else, people are going to be livid. And you've set the tone. Not that we don't have the right to know what these people are being charged with, but yeah, it's a lose-lose, and you've set the tone for that it absolutely must be murder for all three people, and I just don't foresee that making it all the way through. Because if they are charged with felony murder, I don't think the other two, the older McMichael and this Roddy Bryan guy, I just don't. And if they're acquitted, people are going to lose their ever-loving minds.
Well, I mean, overcharging is a problem. It's problematic if the jury can't come back with felony murder. And I do think that they overcharge in order to force pleas. Is you're going to take the manslaughter or you're going away forever.
So I agree with you. I just am having a hard time comprehending that they would do that in this case. It happens all the time, yes. It's just like it's going to bite them in the butt.
Yeah, if there's a plea, if there's a plea to a lesser charge, they're going to say that it's being swept under the rug. I think the governor's just trying to get through November and trying to keep the state red. don't give the other side talking points, and I hate to be that petty about the case, but it sure does feel like this case got a lot of attention and a lot of things got backburnered.
I mean,
but it is worth looking this guy up just to see his booking photo. That haircut, though.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a good look.
Yeah, I mean, that's kitchen table, bowl on the head haircut. Sorry to be petty.
No, I mean, you know, some people just have a lot of things working against them. He's one of them.
Access to a barber, you know, I don't know. So moving on, story that a bombshell you dropped last Tuesday.
I think it was Monday, but
Monday?
It's the same difference at this point. I don't know. I think it was Monday.
Military police investigation report concluding. Okay, let's back up a little bit. You had some information on a guy who's running for sheriff down in your area. He is a retired Army officer. I believe he's a retired guardsman or reservist, colonel. 40 years in law enforcement. And you find years worth of testimony of his trail of abuse to different women. You want to kind of give the view from 30,000 feet?
Sure. So, like you said, 40 years in law enforcement. He worked for the GBI. I think that was his longest tenure, and he had multiple deployments during that time. Then went to work for the Bryan County Sheriff's Office, which is, I mean, if you're not familiar with the area, it's a little bit coastal, but also touches Bullitt County, so it has a little bit of rural to it. But it's, I don't know. It's a very diverse county. They have a military Fort Stewart base, or the military base there, Fort Stewart. So it has transient people, and he's lived, I think, since 2000 in our area, but was with the GBI in Atlanta and some other places, in Savannah too. Just very long history. And this information actually came to me by an anonymous source in one of the most unique ways I've ever obtained information. Everything was left for me at a, I guess, neutral location in an envelope with a couple hundred pages of documentation, and then a SD card of 911 calls and pictures and things like that. So I was told that this information existed, that the man had received an Article 15 punitive reprimand, which is pretty, I'll let Dave talk about that in a second, but so I knew, and that he's running for sheriff, and so I knew that there had to be something to it, because I mean, most of us have heard incidences of sexual assault in the military, and that it's covered up, and just a problem across branches generally. And so I felt that it was not a usual situation with sexual assault and someone running for office, where it's very much like decades later of he said, she said. So I went and got the documents, verified their validity, started doing research, and the story pretty much came together, I mean, very quickly. But as it turns out, the man has basically at least 10 years worth of documentation that shows, you know, a report that found that there was aggravated sexual assault claims that were founded, domestic violence incidents. He reported his truck stolen to his own sheriff's office. He started a police chase against a woman while he was in his pajamas, and said he didn't know the woman, but then it ended up being someone that he had custody of the woman's child. And that's just what we know. So, and what there's documents of. So it was a very alarming story. And like I said, he's running for sheriff in a 5-way Republican primary. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. But
and his ex-wife, which I guess where a lot of this starts, was also military. She was Air Force. They were both light bird colonels at the time, both in Georgia, not the country of Georgia. She was working at the embassy, and he was deployed, I think, with the Guard.
That's right.
I know,
and they weren't deployed. People, there were some questions about that. I just want to clarify because I think you brought it up too. She was placed at the embassy as part of, I guess there's like a military spouse program where you can be placed in the same country, and they were in different branches, but they put her at the embassy, and then she ended up towards the end working for the Wounded Warrior Project and a division of it over there, but she was placed there so that they could go together. Yeah,
and that's when I first was talking about you don't deploy husbands and wives together typically. I was thinking he was deployed to the sandbox. Right. I didn't realize it was a civil deployment.
Sure.
So they're estranged at this point. She's had enough, and he sexually assaults her, according to her statements. Beats her so bad that the folks at the embassy notice.
Well, before all of that happened, there was a person at the embassy, and this is another interesting point that made me feel certain in the credibility of what I was being told in the documents and everything. The woman worked at the wife worked at the embassy, and before they were estranged, this other woman who worked there, a coworker, would overhear her crying on the phone, begging someone not to hurt the dog. She would see her upset. She was aware of their marital problems, that that she'd been to the medical unit a number of times. And the coworker, ironically enough, when she was in the United States herself, she was a prosecutor in Washington State, and she worked in the domestic violence unit and then a sexual assault unit. So she was very familiar with indicators of these types of things. And so she's actually the one that identified the issue to the embassy staff, and was like, this situation needs immediate assistance. This woman is in danger. I'm worried about the safety of her and her life and her well-being. And the embassy actually put the wife in a hotel, and ordered in conjunction with the Army, ordered the candidate for sheriff, Michael Fordham, to leave the country.
And that's a big deal. To be thrown out of country, again, as a field grade officer, thrown out of country is a big deal. So this is in 2016, is that right?
No, that was actually in August of 2012.
2012, we have this case. All right.
Yeah. And it took her over a year to get... So there were multiple investigations by the U.S. Embassy, a colonel with the U.S. Embassy, a family advocacy program, the Criminal Investigations Division, multiple investigations in the Army and in the Air Force. But it took a year for her to get the attention of the U.S. military police, and it took them 20 months to conduct an investigation. And they kept coming up short, saying that there was emotional abuse and verbal abuse, but no physical abuse. Everybody but the military police, and the military police were the ones that said there was verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and founded claims of sexual assault.
And this is over years, right?
Yep.
And during this time, he's promoted from light bird to full bird colonel. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about that a little bit. That has a lot to do with points, especially in a reserve component where you see each other once a month. So it's one of those things where it's your turn to rotate onto from a command to a staff, and staff to a command position. So that has a lot to do with just racking up points. He's deployed this many times. He's got this much time in grade. It's time. You're going to get promoted. But all while this is going on, he's being investigated by probably the CID, Criminal Investigation Division. So at what point do we what year was he recalled?
Can you help me understand what that means?
Yeah. Okay. So in the article,
recalled to active duty.
Yeah, from inactive ready reserve.
He was deployed multiple times during all of this to other places, but they called him back to active duty to report on the charges in April 2016.
That's where I got 16.
For the administration of military justice. That's what they called it.
That is the... I saw that order, and I was like, I have never seen a recall order like that. And I was not in JAG or anything else, but when I read that, I was like, whoo. Mm-hmm. That means he was out. He was an inactive reserve, means you still technically belong to the Army, but you're a non-drilling reserve component. So you can be recalled. You don't throw your uniforms away. But you don't drill, you don't make any money. It's typically it's 2 years that you're inactive. And he gets an order, get your ass in here, and you're gonna report for punishment.
Well, and so that happened in April 2016, and then in May of 2016, he was actually charged by the military. I guess the military court, USMC is the way they kept referring to it, on forcible rape charges, assault. He threatened to kill the dog. He kicked the dog, threw the dog. And then threatened to kill his wife and threatened her life and well-being. And, I didn't really know this to the degree that I found out in this investigation of this information, but, the military doesn't use the same words that we do. So there's no arrest, there's no, they say the charges are preferred, which is like an indictment. It's just very different. But the positive about this story is that it is in a military community, and not everybody, most of the people who are reading this and who will be voting for this man understand what these things mean. But as alarming as all of this is that it's, I guess, exacerbated by the fact that on May 3rd, he's charged in the court with all these things. On May 4th of 2016, he contacts Georgia Post, which is the Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, and they order an immediate suspension of his law enforcement license or his certificate because he has been charged with felony offenses. They actually called them arrests of felony offenses, but that's a whole other story because he got his certification back because he claims he was never arrested. And the ultimate, there's so many breakdowns here, but his employment was never interrupted with the Bryan County Sheriff's Office. He was never, he was chief investigator for the sex crimes unit.
Yeah. So, as we go through the story, the pattern of abuse, and some of what you see in the military community, particularly somebody who's had a long career in multiple deployments, can be related to PTSD. And I'm not sympathizing with the guy. There is a reluctance within the military community to seek help. And it affects different people different ways. This guy, from looking at his uniform, was infantry. He was in long enough to be a colonel, which means he served 20 plus years. Even in whether it's a all reserve component or not, I don't know, but would have had multiple deployments. If you think about the last 20 years or that we've had, are some of the hottest fighting time that we've had. So there's a punishment of sorts that goes along with going and getting mental help, particularly for an officer who's trying to, a captain trying to make major, a major trying to make lieutenant colonel, somebody who's trying to take that next rung on the ladder. You don't want your career interrupted by seeking help. The other component to that is, as a guardsman or reservist, there aren't as many resources, because even though he's coming back to a more or less a military community with where he lives now, when you deploy as in a reserve component, you go to wherever, and then you come home. And when you're on active duty, you come back to your post, and you have a community around you. You have all the spouses have support, and they, especially nowadays, they're looking for signs of PTSD. When you come home as a reservist, you hang up your boots and you go and put on your suit and go back to work and start to pretend that everything's normal. And for a lot of guys, it's hard to flip the light switch in your head. I kind of compare coming home to when I was a kid. I lived in Florida, so we got to tour behind the scenes at Disney, and there's something they call the Magic Door, and it's where all the actors on one side everything's gray and very bland. It's just very industrial. It's the backside of Disney, and you walk through this door and you walk into the Magic Kingdom, and everything is lit up and everything's beautiful. Music's playing. Your mind doesn't switch doesn't have the ability to switch like that, to go from the sandbox and flip the switch, and all of a sudden you're back and everybody is talking about buying a lawnmower, and you're back fighting with the copier at the office, and your brain has a hard time making that transition. I think it's a little easier when you're an active duty soldier. That doesn't excuse what happened, but I think it's important to understand the mental illness aspect to somebody that may have led him down the path to being an abuser, to not be able to control his rage.
Mm-hmm. But we were talking about that before the show, in that people are understanding of those things, that those things are a reality. I mean, they're not understanding and just accept it as fact, but I mean, it's a reality. But those people usually aren't promoted to higher office, nor do they seek higher office. I mean, that's what's so bold to me, is that this man has this very long record of documented abuse of women, and he thought that no one would find out.
No, it is not excuse. Contributing reasons aren't excuses, and he shouldn't be in law enforcement at all.
Right. So that's one of the things that's very frustrating, is that the ultimate disposition from... So he had legal counsel and submitted a plea agreement, a pretrial agreement in military court. We don't know what that said, but if you're submitting a pretrial agreement on behalf of the defense, I mean, there's some acknowledgement there. But the ultimate reprimand was that he wrongfully and dishonorably engaged in an abusive relationship with the woman, and the officer was unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman. And then there was a little bit more slapping on the lack of professionalism and the poor judgment and the way it reflects on the U.S. Army and all this stuff. And it ends with, "I question your continued service in the U.S. Army." Well, because there was no further reference or finding in the official reprimand, even though the report was very clear about what was found, they took him off suspension with his law enforcement certification, and his life went on as normal, literally.
And what they did by doing that, and I understand why they did it. It's not right. They did it because you don't want to have a public court-martial for this guy. It's a black guy in the Army. He's a field grade officer. I mean, he's no longer the Army's problem. He's already out. He's already on IRR. Now, if he was active duty and he was working on his star, and he got an Article 15 like that, career killer. It's over. You'll be. It's just, you're done. You're not gonna get your next promotion. You're not gonna be in command everywhere you go. And Article 15s are company grade, which obviously can't give them, but that goes away when you leave that company. When you leave that command, it goes away. It's just thrown in the shredder. It doesn't follow you. What's called your 201 file. And then there's field grade, and that follows you. And then there's general grade, and that's a killer. They get a general grade Article 15, and officers call it letter of reprimand, but it's under Article 15. That's damning. It would be a career killer, and that would be somewhat punitive if he was wanting to continue a military career. For him, he's out. He's already out. It doesn't. The Article 15 doesn't follow you to civilian life.
No, and then his quote punishment was he forfeited basically 1 month's pay, and it was spread out over 2 months. It was 1/2 of 1 month's salary for 2 months.
Right.
And I mean, there's nobody who can look at the evidence and say that is sufficient or right. I mean, the woman had to fight for the investigation to move forward anyway, and then the whole thing was a cluster. And then she asked, they issued a restraining order against, or a military protective order against him. All these precautions were taken because of the severity of it all. And the guy comes home. She says in one of her victim statements that she's afraid to return to the state of Georgia. They do get divorced eventually, and he marries someone else and continues on law enforcement. And now he's running for the highest position in the county, and one of the most powerful positions in the state. Truly, I mean, a sheriff in rural Georgia particularly is overwhelmingly powerful. And
the sheriff is the most powerful man in the county. Mm-hmm. I mean, that hands down, the most powerful man in the army, in the county. Commissioners could tell the sheriff to do this, and no. I'm a duly elected a constitutional officer. No. In fact, it happened out here when the Board of Commissioners tried to put, we're going to put metal detectors at the administrative building. And our sheriff out here said, no. You're not using my deputies. We're stretched out enough as it is. So no, you can do whatever you want over there, but we're not having anything to do with it. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if they put marshals there, and then finally they voted to take it out when people like me showed up, and they're like, "Well, take off your belt." I'm like, "No." Take off your watch. No. Well, you can't come in. Well, I guess my tag's not getting paid. But what the Army did by making it disappear is allow him to continue with the pattern of abuse. I believe his next wife had similar experiences with him.
There are multiple reports of domestics. There's a 911 call where and we talked about this as well. There's a 911 call where she's screaming, "Leave me alone! Get away from me!" It's disturbing. It's hard to listen to, and she says, "I need an ambulance right away," and Michael Fordham calls back to dispatch and says everything's fine. His wife just thought she cut off her finger and cancel it, and so they canceled it and didn't send anybody. And it wasn't until an hour later that the mother-in-law, her mother, called 911 and said, "I believe my daughter's been beat up. We need somebody to come here."
He canceled his own 911 call at his house.
For domestic violence.
That makes, under no circumstances should that ever be acceptable. I don't care if it's the sheriff. Sorry, Sheriff, we got to come in. We got to talk to your wife.
Yeah, let's just make sure everyone's good to go, or that people don't need to be separated for the evening or whatever.
Yeah, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Melania making a 911 call. You go in and you investigate. Sorry, Mr. President, we need to come inside. We need to make sure everything's okay. That to me shows the mentality of that department. Either they're so scared because he was the golden boy, or they kind of knew what was going on and they ignored it, which I mean, it'd be hard to make that accusation. But it seems to me like it's a top-down organization. He's the number 2 man. Sheriff's deputies are employed at will. And they're like, well, if the boss man says everything's good, I'm not going to put my career at risk and disobey him. I think you said the article was like, I mean, it's a long article. It's a good read. A lot of the documentation's in there. If you're, if you want to see some of the stuff, like the recall order from to active duty is something like I've never read, and I've been in reserve components and I've been ordered to active duty, and like, whoo, that's bad. So it's a great read. I think we should when this podcast dropped, we should put a link back to that story. I say it's a good read. It's a horrible read. It's hard to read because it's so glaring that's what's going on. One of the quotes was, she I found her unresponsive in the tub, and then she became combative. What?
Yeah.
The excuses he gives, I mean, I'm not an expert in domestic violence, and I can see through that. Sorry, Eric. Sometimes I get on the show and it's just like you and I talking. I talk like I normally do, but yeah, you can see through that. She became combative. She thought she cut her finger off, but don't send the ambulance. I mean, all these things are, I mean, it's not even Monday morning quarterback. It is like in the middle of it's like she thought she cut herself bad at things. She thought she cut her finger off. Well, we're sending EMS and we're going to come check on you. So, so there's we could do another hour long show with military lawyers on this one, but moving on. So next door, Kelly Loffler telling everyone she and her husband donated $1 million.
This woman, I mean, somebody has got to intervene.
I told you before the show, I want to go to work for her. Not because I'm supporting or not supporting her. Just somebody needs to take her by the hand and say, sweetie, no. Don't do that. Stop bragging about how much money you have. That doesn't resonate with the guy down the street. That doesn't bragging about sending your personal airplane, putting pictures of the checks you donated to all the special, to check off all the boxes of the people.
It's so ugly. I mean, it's so freaking ugly. And then the press release doesn't just say that it happened, but goes on to talk about how proud they are and, how many people it's going to help, and we will ensure Georgia families have the support and resources they need, and we're happy to play our part and for the people who are most in need, and just going on and on and on. And like, we are all huge advocates of the private sector stepping up, but you got to be humble at some point. And this is, you're supposed to let other people talk about these types of things. You don't tell them yourselves. And we've talked about how she took pictures of checks where she donated part of her salary, and it's just very much, look at me, look how wonderful I am, and it's not a good look.
Yeah. By the way, these are our opinions and not necessarily those of All on Georgia. Certainly not those of any All on Georgia reporter not offering commentary on the show.
That's right.
So the CDC is offering some recommendations for school districts to reopen. And they are just what the prison doctor ordered.
I wrote that.
I know.
So there's been a lot of, we actually talked about it before the show about, there was a graphic going around that had a lot of these things listed, and then there's people who are saying that it's not true or it's fake news. This that we're talking about came directly from the CDC website. The contention is that these are recommendations, not mandatory requirements. So no, the states and the local districts are not required to do these things, but they're recommended. And my contention with all of this is that if they issue these recommendations and then a school district doesn't implement them, whether it be because they can't afford to or they don't have the resources or whatever, someone's going to sue if their kid gets sick. So that's the most obnoxious part of it. And then, of course, the standards are completely unreasonable and just like prison. So
yeah, a mask for kids 2 and up, daily school and bus sanitation, keep kids' belongings away from every other child's belongings, avoid sharing toys, books, learning aids, equipment and your little note. What about computer labs?
How are you supposed? Are you going to give everyone their own computer?
I mean, it's just free money. Space desk and chair 6 feet apart and keep all desks facing the same way. 1 child per seat on school buses. 6-foot tape markers on floor, walls, etc. Closing dining halls and playgrounds. Have children bring their own meals. Yes. And serve individually at desk. Limit room moms, volunteer, etc. Well, I like the idea of kids bringing their own damn lunch.
Yeah, I was under the impression that all the kids on the free lunch program were on it because they just didn't want to bring their own lunch. I mean, we can talk about the free lunch program and the legitimacy of it all day long, but the reality is that there are children who that's the only meals they get for breakfast and lunch, and they don't have an option to bring it from home. So what they're proposing here is that you don't change classes or anything. So basically a kid walks into school, let's say a 4th grader, walks into school, goes directly to his classroom, puts all of his stuff in his own cubby that's right next to his desk that's 6 feet apart from everyone. He doesn't share markers, pencils, scissors, or books or anything. He doesn't touch anybody else. He has a staggered arrival time. He has a staggered departure time. He sits alone on the bus on his way home. The teachers come to them instead of moving to different classes. He sits at that desk for lunch. They don't go outside for recess. If they have PE, it's just like running on a track. It's ridiculous.
Okay. My parenting experience is limited to being the godfather of my twin nephews. And I have other nieces and nephews, but these are the ones that I've been, within 5 miles of them their entire life. The first thing you try to teach a kid is share. Now, I did listen to a fight between 2 3-year-olds where one yelled, "Share!" I'm like, that's not what sharing is, son. You just took that away from your brother. But that's the first thing we try to teach: share. The isolation. Their brains are mush, and they're developing. And you're going to take a kid, and if you put somebody in the isolation hole in prison, that's prison. And that has a mental aspect to it, and that brain's already developed. You're going to take a 4-year-old. The worst thing that you can do in school is be the outcast and be by yourself. Is so you sit by yourself. Plus, we're increasing the cost of transportation, because now that we have to do, I'm guessing, twice as many buses or bus trips, because you only have 1 kid per seat. They don't normally seat 2 or 3.
That's right.
It's unsustainable, number one, because you just don't. Think about high school. High school is a petri dish of swapping spit and kind of figuring your way around dealing with the opposite sex and all that stuff. This it's just not going to work. And you're going to tell the high school history teacher or you have a class sitting together. Well, the thing about changing classes is you may be in advanced math, but not advanced English. So you're going to take your AP math class, but then you're going to go take your regular course in English because that's not your best subject, and then you're going to go take an AP science class. Well, if you can't change classes and you can't go to lockers because they have to be 6 feet apart, how does that work? What does that look like? I don't think it's workable.
No.
Not to mention, we're looking at a huge budget shortfall. Huge.
Oh yeah, massive. We'll get into this more next week because
right.
I don't want to do this an injustice, but
oh no, I'm just talking about just in the schools.
Sure, but they're talking about $1.3 billion cut from the state's formula. That's $700 a student. Then you talk about the shortfall in SPLOST because people aren't spending, and then other shortfalls across the board at the local level. They're talking about furloughs. So you're trying to do more. You got to do more with fewer people and less money.
I did read one plan that's more workable, which is lower class sizes by having alternating weeks or alternating days of work at home versus being at school. So you reduce the capacity of the school by 50%. So it's not as populated.
Okay, but I mean, you'll never hear me say that school is daycare, but how are you going to coordinate that with parents?
I don't know. Again, that's one of those things like, when they get the argument against the 4-day work week or school week. But yeah, for a lot of parents, the idea of having to take a week off every other week, or I can work 3 days this week, 2 days next week, however they're going to work it. I don't know. I mean, at some point, we're just going to have to accept the fact that it's around. COVID's around. It's not going anywhere. And we have to get back to life. So we're going to do this at the school, and then we're going to pack over at Home Depot. We're going to cram into Walmart. Plus, this is the first time I can think of in scientific history that we're getting daily updates. Things are changing daily. And look, if things happen in science slowly. So what we get is, even from an investing standpoint, is we get the news at 8:00 in the morning that a company for a pharmaceutical research company comes on and says, hey, we've had some really positive responses to this medication in mice, and we're ready to take it to the next step. And that stock shoots up. The algorithms get a hold of that news story, and that stock price just shoots for the stars. Then we find out the next day that, well, we're not going to get FDA clearance to move to the next level because of whatever, and then the stock plummets. So this is the first time that I can remember. I mean, when we were researching a polio vaccine, there wasn't a daily thing looking at it. It was very smart people getting in a room and researching how to prevent this disease, but there wasn't this daily update that the public is crying, say, feed me. I need this. We got to feed this beast we call a 24-hour news cycle.
Right.
And the CDC, I mean, they have no place putting this crap out. What they need to do is put out the information of what we know and allow school districts to figure out what they're going to do. Allow voters and parents to figure out what they're going to do with the local school boards. But we can't have that. This is Jessica's favorite. Encourage employees and students to take break from watching, reading, or listening to news stories about COVID-19, including social media, if they are feeling overwhelmed or distressed.
Well, I mean, they're probably overwhelmed by these dumbass ideas.
Yeah, you're creating the damn problem and then say, you need to take a break from what we're telling you. And this doesn't even go into the stupidity of the mask. We were talking before the show, masks get clogged. Any filter that's good enough to pick up particles gets clogged. And what you're doing is when you wear the same mask all day long, as that filter gets clogged, you can't get rid of your CO2 and bring in fresh oxygen. So you're rebreathing the same air, which can cause particularly people who already have lung problems, asthma, somebody who has got who's had pneumonia before, somebody who already has lung problems, and then you introduce a higher concentration of carbon dioxide to them. I mean, not like it can be deadly, but it can cause a lot of health problems. There's a reason we need fresh air and sunshine. So, Jessica, you want to get on to your closing thought?
Right. So, obviously, the day that you guys are listening to this is Memorial Day or closely thereafter. But I saw an article last week that said only 43% of Americans know the meaning behind Memorial Day, and 36% of them admitted to not knowing the difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And the article was like pawning it off on the fact that it's a common mistake and blah blah blah. Well, it might be common, but it's not acceptable. And the definition is in the word. I mean, memory, memorial. They're gone. They died. Veterans, just veterans generally. It's simple and it's frustrating, and these people vote.
Yes, they do. To quote Matt Lowe, I'm all about some voter suppression. No, and that's one of those things I've said for years. Is it'll be Memorial Day. So, Dave, thank you for your service. No. I mean, that's thank you, but this is the day for the folks that didn't come home.
Pay the ultimate sacrifice.
You know, November 11th is the day to. I mean, and there are those guys that say they like to post pictures of themselves in uniform November 11th or whatever. But Memorial Day is a solemn day. It's one of those things. Have a happy Memorial Day. So it's sort of like saying have a happy funeral. It's supposed to be a day of reflection, and you know we are Americans. We get the grills out and all that stuff, but it's at least a time to think about those who sacrificed.
Please.
And you know what? Anybody who's listening to the show is not going to be in that 43%.
They better not be.
It's just not.
We're going to block your radio streams if you are. Can't listen anymore.
You're banned from listening.
We don't want you. Yeah.
Hey, have a great week, everybody. For Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Cumby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. See you next, or talk to you next Monday. Yeah.